came in a lot higher than that,
Right.
almost double.
Well, that's something we can discuss.
Is there anything I should be?
Yeah, well, can she hear us?
We're in.
Carol, can you hear us?
Okay, is everybody in?
Hey, Carol, you're
Time?
I'm-
5:30. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
This is the Public Works Board meeting for March 23rd. And let's go around the room introducing ourselves for roll call. I'm David.
Tiffany Martin.
Tyler Pretzman.
George Kroger. And with us, our project manager, Ryan Lobster, Property and Associates. Thank you, sir. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Good. First, let's welcome Tiffany to this group. We've been working together for over a year now, almost together. And we welcome you aboard.
Thank you so much.
It's a good group. And I enjoy working with this team.
And thanks for the flexibility on the nights. Thursdays are
Yeah.
often very problematic. Thank you.
Okay, I unfortunately do not have the February minutes in front of me, but does anyone have any issues or questions or comments about those minutes? We really were just sort of treading water last month. And I think we're at a point where we can really look at 2026 and approach it anew. But Ryan, would you give us any update that you might have?
Sure, so since the last meeting, I think there's been a few correspondences between myself and Tyler based on a few more residents had questions. One of the questions came from a veteran exemption, and they own 2 properties in the city of Hudson. And the way that the county system, one is developed with a home, the other one's vacant.
Mhm.
So I guess it's something that I learned. I didn't realize that the county does not include the veteran exemption status on vacant land. So in looking at that a little further, the board may wish to further discuss how someone who is a veteran who owns more than one property or has property that's being assessed an SID fee, but doesn't have an exemption for that parcel based on county real properties, formula. That's what we use to generate the file, that we submit as part of the tax, rolls. In doing this conversation with Mark Taylor at the county, he had asked me if I knew what the city's goal for submission of the next year's file, rolls would be for the SID. I know last year we worked through a couple of hiccups. I think we're at a point now where we shouldn't have those this time, but I don't know if there is a date yet. I know Tyler had talked about potentially needing to set a date for credit applications and things like that, so. I think that's kind of the only thing that we've had to discuss since the last meeting.
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, so just touching base on that. Last year, our deadline was May 1st, I wanna say. I think it was.
Right, yep.
I know we missed a meeting or so, so maybe we wanna talk about maybe having it at the end of May. Say June 1st or something like that. Again, that's just a board discussion. And then also just touching on Ryan's, veterans for if you have multiple properties, that's also gonna be for a firefighter exemption as well. That's something that we need to discuss if we're, gonna have multiple properties for credit apps for these veterans or firefighters. I can't imagine that it's gonna be a lot. But it's something that we just need to discuss so we can clean it up and move on. Was one person who reached out who ended up having a second. She bought the property right next to hers. It was vacant. She ended up getting an invoice for $50. She was a veteran, so she was exempt in her house, but the property next door was vacant, so she got a $50, tax. She was fine with paying the tax this year. I told her that, we've never come across this yet.
Mhm.
Thank you for reaching out. And that we would discuss it as a board. So it's just something that we need to vote on and clean up. And the deadline. Just touching else on what Ryan said, there was about a half a dozen inquiries on the SID. I'm not sure when the flyer went out, but there must have been some mistake in the link. Tiffany and I got a bunch of emails back and forth. People said, we put it in exactly how it's written. It must have, one of the letters might have been mixed up, and I know the URL is 100, letters long, so. So maybe we need to clean that up. That's it.
Terrific. Spend a few minutes on some of the correspondence that came in and the issues that have come up, and you've been addressing them head on.
Yep, a few of them just didn't have the link right, so they couldn't figure out.
Okay.
They didn't even know what was going on. What's an SID fee? What is this? Once we sent them the correct link, they got on, they understood it. I explained, to them that the city was doing this sidewalk improvement plan. I kind of used a basic email that was, just basic to all of them to understand. There was also another property who did not fill out the total work that was complete.
Mhm.
So when we did the credit application last year, they were based on, they didn't fill out the application all the way, so they got $100 credit. Or I'm sorry, they didn't receive their $100 credit, so she reached out, because one of the lower houses on Allen. She reached out, and what we did was once she finally gave us the correct paperwork, we gave her an additional year on the back end, so she paid her fee this year. She still got her, it ended up being 9 out of 10 years because of when the work was completed.
Mhm.
I had another property who didn't have the application. Once we sent the application to them, they submitted it. That's one of these. Then we also had, let's see here. We also had a new one come in, which looks like they have everything except the application. So we'll just forward the application over to them and get that cleaned up as well.
On the one that we reject, we didn't reject very many last year. And I don't remember this, do you remember the address on that one? Was it that half? No, that was another issue. The half address, 212.
This was back in February, right? January. January, we had 2 denials.
January of this year?
Yep.
Okay.
One of them was, they received a $50 fee. They said that there was no, there was no sidewalk. We sent them a letter explaining to them that even if you don't have a sidewalk, you still have a $50 fee. That was one of the denials. I'm not remembering off the top of my head what the other one was. But they were too simple. Simple.
I want to discuss all of these points on the new business. Is there anything else before we move into the new business?
The only other concern that I had, I know we're moving the meeting. I just didn't know, because I jumped on this committee late. Will that be an issue with any of our needing the resolutions with the council? I didn't. That's why we moved in the first place, so I just want to make sure that we're okay.
Yeah, our moving it was to allow us to approve any bills that came in last minute so we can get it to the common council.
Yep.
We're just gonna have to stay on top of it.
Okay.
And so I think that's, okay.
Okay.
With that said, let's first address the deadline date. I know last year I was very concerned just about our ability to deliver good, clean data. And Brian was able to do that. So I'm comfortable in extending now to June 1st, if you are.
It's fine with me.
Yeah.
I don't, I think the first year was really, where we were gonna get the most applications for credits, right?
Yeah.
That's when everybody said, oh, they're having a tax, let me submit. So we have 3.
Yeah,
So if we get 3 more,
yeah.
and we want them to submit, so. Yeah, June 1st is fine, and like me and Ryan were discussing, I think even last year we had a couple that came in late. We were pushing for the deadline, someone gets something in late, we can, work it out.
Yeah, one of the things that, I was, happy to see that as a group, we were very flexible. It was a new law and we really bent over backwards. I'd like to think we bent over backwards to accommodate. So with that said, let's bring it to a vote. All in favor of extending our deadline for applications for exemptions and prior work to June 1st, aye?
Aye.
Great. So be it.
Gary, one other question, maybe this, I don't know if this is a known date, but I think the same thing happened last year, the firefighters. They have to submit that by a certain date. Do you know that date? Isn't there?
I don't know the date, but right, to get on.
Yeah, so they would just make sure that, I think it's yearly they have to submit that, or I don't know how often they have to submit that.
I knew all this. They do have to submit it to their company, or house.
My only point was make it known so that they need to do it. It doesn't get missed because of a silly deadline, but I think the veterans in general are gonna come from the county. Except for if someone owns multiple properties. I don't know how did the fire department come from the county as well, or was it a combination?
No, it comes from the county.
Yep.
And Reverge, and we piggybacked onto that.
Yep.
And with that said, our piggybacking or taking a feed from the county is a bit off track from the way the law currently is stated. But the fact that the exemptions are going through our clerks here at City Hall really does comply with the language that says paperwork has to be submitted. Because we're then passing it on to the county. So, and I continue to think that, taking that data that's being collected by the county is the right way of going about it, right? So,
So what do you wanna do? You wanna reach out to the chief and just let him know that that of our deadline and. if
No,
there's
you know what,
anybody
first I'm
that-
gonna go back and look at the county language.
Okay,
I don't remember a specific date, but I guess there must be. And certainly we have it, right? So, that, in a minute, I think we need to talk about communications as well in general. So this is all sort of leading to that. So let's talk about communications. I was, you know, I thought we did a good job in communicating with the public last year. You know, we used a lot of different avenues. But when I was at, the mayor's, town hall in the first ward, there was just a lot of feedback that they did not know what was going on and that I found it hard to believe, but one person indicated that they called up City Hall and no one knew how to help them, which doesn't I mean, I was getting phone calls that, you know, from the clerks giving out my number, which was fine, particularly around veterans. So I find it very surprising that that could have happened. But, you know, that was feedback from one person. Others were confused about the timeline. Someone was suggesting that this, assessment would only be in place for 10 years. That is not the case at all. This is, there is no cease date associated with it. The only thing I can think of is 10 years being associated with getting credits, right? So, you know, I'd like a little discussion on, and Tiffany, I'd like your input too, because you're coming in and you're getting a lot of the communications and you were at the meeting. What can we be doing better in communication?
just thinking about what we did last year, we had the 2 flyers, social media posts, right? That Hudson Hub app.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to remember, was there anything else?
No, that's pretty much, we had 2 mailings that we
Yep.
piggybacked onto the water and sewer.
Yep.
We used social media, and yes, we used the hub. And we posted on, and we kept directing people to our webpage, which had, I think, a pretty complete picture of what was involved with this initiative.
Yeah.
George, what do you think?
I thought we did a pretty good job. I mean, to get it in your tax, your water and sewer bill. It's like, look, if you're not seeing it then I don't know. And plus you can go into the Hudson Hub webpage and find it there. I'm surprised that people don't go there first if they do have questions.
You know, I could understand, like, if someone has, you know, there's a bunch of properties in Hudson where people don't get their water and sewer, they have somebody who does that for them.
Okay.
So maybe they didn't, you know, see it, and it is a new law. You know, maybe social media really, because everybody is on social media. Maybe we could really pound it more there.
Does the board have a social media presence?
We do not.
Okay.
That
I have
piece
very
came-
strong feelings about using social media for official communications. I think that it's while it's a great way of getting information out there, the message is often diluted by other conversations that have nothing to do with the subject that's
Gets
being
off the
posted.
subject, right?
And people become used to that being an official means of
Source.
communication. So I think that Hudson Hub is Hudson Hub, the city website are great go-tos. I like the fact that we have mailers. We could do a push ahead of time, a few weeks ahead of time to press and have them pick it up. I don't know how anyone else feels about having this posted on social media. I just am not.
Yeah, I'm not a social media person,
Yeah.
but I just know a lot of people are. And I know that last year Justin as the ADA coordinator that's the way he did it. So
Well, I'm not even sure if he did it. I know I did.
Oh, okay.
As the chairperson, I use my personal Facebook account to post this information, identifying myself as the Public Works Commission. And it's supplemental, it's, it's not complete, and so, yeah, I'm not real thrilled with that. But, so maybe we chalk it up to the first year and just keep plugging away? When you said do a push, what did you mean by that?
So just do, not even a press release, but just a brief announcement that goes out to media that they can then play on WAMC, so it's repeated on the radio, it's repeated in print, it's repeated online.
Newspaper.
Yeah, would
That's
be,
great.
would be a good way of getting it out there.
Okay,
Or if we were to do something on social media, I would recommend it being a, not your page, but a Public Works Board page that is not where any questions are directed to the board rather than sent through,
Right.
sent
Back to
through.
our website.
Otherwise you're spending all day online managing a social media presence. Right, and and frankly, it's, very often just circling the drain. It's not anything
Yeah.
productive.
Yeah, I agree.
so press release it is.
And, and just being the first year, everything's new to everyone,
Tell me about it.
so it's,
Yeah.
I can understand the frustration.
And to that end, I've requested that the council's attorney review the law and come join us to explain it all. Because even through last year, there was some debates as to issues such as property owners' liability. So I don't have a date for that, but, and if nothing else, sooner than later, I will sit down and I'll review, we'll go through the law together, just so that we have a good understanding of it. And it does need to be tweaked, and this is the year to do that.
Okay, just to back up a little bit, so we should be thinking about this push now? Right, because
Yeah.
our deadline is
Yeah.
June 1st.
Yeah.
Mid-May is when we really wanna,
Yes.
we're not gonna meet before then.
Yeah.
So maybe just some correspondence through email or something and throw something together.
Did we ever take, I'm sorry to interrupt you, did
That's
we
okay.
ever take advantage of, or did we ever, let me rephrase, did we ever get out in front of the city at large or the people of city of Hudson and talk about, we fulfilled our mission to alleviate the federal, the DOJ injunction, is that the correct term for it?
Right. Yeah, it's a fair, we know what we're talking about, yeah. Yeah,
I mean, I guess in terms of, that might be a way to get out the word to everybody, like, once again, we just wanted to tout that we're addressing these, not that we are worried about DOJ coming back on top of us, it sounds like that's very unlikely. But that was kind of the initiation of why we came into existence.
Right, our goals.
And it lets people understand like, oh, yeah, right, and that's why they're doing these things and just to publicize it again,
It would not hurt. I know that I leaned on that early on. Because that was justification. Everyone, this SID had this, black mark around it. And, when I started talking about it, it was getting the city into ADA compliance. No one's gonna have a problem with ADA
Right,
compliance.
that should be a happy thought.
Yeah,
Better make it safe for your grandma.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe in our next flyer, we put some of the issues that DOJ came up with against the city, and then what we did to relieve it. Almost like a Q&A type thing.
Sure, and I think I know that there's some communications that I wrote going back, that in fact, okay, this is what we've accomplished, because we've accomplished a lot. You know, we set up the exemption process, you know, and, you know, we worked through the credit application and I won't call it awarding, but, you know, granting credits. There were a lot of accomplishments and I tried to promote that, but, you know, doing it again and again doesn't hurt, particularly given the fact that it's the second year, we're going around it the second time around.
We also have another round of town hall meetings that will be kicking off, and the mayor could potentially announce at those meetings as
Yeah.
well.
And I think Tiffany brought up the point that, you know, true confessions here. I was at my town hall meeting and someone had an SID question. And I just kind of said, gee, I don't know, I don't want to give the wrong information, but I think we should, as members of this panel, at least I'm going to make sure that for the next version, if there is a question, I'll stand right up and say, okay, blah, 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 you know, this is what we're about, just to
Yeah, I
be
mean,
ready to speak to.
listen, I had the same feelings at the town hall. But you know what? That was the mayor's, you
Well,
know.
I didn't want to.
He wasn't going down, you know, a dead end, you know, and so I did not want to step on toes. And I actually did not want to deal with them public. Cause they were really all over the place.
But I think we should be ready for that, and that, you know,
Yeah.
and I look at myself in the mirror and say, get yourself prepped and ready to say whatever, you know,
Right.
answer the questions.
Can I go
Okay.
back a few steps and ask about the exemptions for veterans? So if a veteran, right now, we've encountered a veteran who owns a vacant property next door and has purchased that and applied for the credit. What if a veteran owns a different property that is a rental property? Are they eligible for the?
Well, that's the next issue that I think is open. So let's discuss that. So, I mean, I'm open. Here's my initial, knee-jerk reaction. So, and I like to go to extremes. So if a veteran has a home and they also have a property for rent, no, I don't think they deserve it. Deserve is the wrong word. I don't even go there. I think the spirit of the law was that we want to acknowledge the service of the veteran. And so therefore, we are basically
Exempting their property,
exempting their property.
that they're living on.
Yeah.
Right.
A second property, whether there's a home on it or it's empty, is certainly, I don't see the rationale that says, yes. Thoughts?
If it's a contiguous vacant, right, if it's an adjacent vacant property, that I can see, as if they're just adding on to their property. If they build on that and it becomes a rental property or an income property, then I could see where they wouldn't get the credit. And certainly, I think if it's an income property that is not connected in any way to their property, that it would not be exempt.
But you're suggesting that if it's adjacent and they've added to it, the exemption should apply.
I just kind of look at that as an extension of their existing property. I don't know how everyone else feels about that.
You know, I agree with that, and I think that that's what the homeowner was looking for. You know, that, it seems to me like when we looked up that piece of property, take that one for example, that lot came available and she bought it, right? It technically should be one lot now.
Right. But it is,
But it isn't yet.
They can go through the process of merging,
They could go through the process of merging it.
but until they do that, it is its own parcel, its own tax IP. And
Right.
that's why it gets that's why there's a fee associated with it. Every parcel has a fee. The exemptions and credits override the fee to some amount, whether it's full, partial.
Right.
So,
And we also have to take into consideration, if it is a rental property, it's a higher rate,
begin with.
correct me, right?
well, it depends on the property class. So the way the law is written, it's based on property class.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So if it was a single family residence, that is, I don't know the exact property codes off the top of my head, but just a single family home that's rented to a person, not so much short term, but just regular rental, it probably wouldn't show up any different. I don't think the county classifies.
What if it's a three family rental?
Correct, then it's 3 family or more, I believe, then yes, there's a different rate that's applied, yes.
So I am leaning towards agreeing. You know, the veterans or firefighter, we did say both those names. Should get exemption for their home that they're living,
Yes,
right? And anything else, or adjacent property, right? And then anything else that's commercialized, not be exempt. Right, is that what we're?
The question I have, though, just to toss up, let's take the devil's advocate here. You know, one, it sounds a little onerous to a veteran, like, you know, here, Nick's mocks on, you know, adjacent or additional properties. And then you have to ask yourself, how many of those condition, how many of those are there? 5, 3? I mean, it's probably like insignificant to the point where the political mud on the shoes that we're gonna cause by saying yes to that, it's like, is it really working? You know, do we wanna like, I mean, you know, just throwing that out there for your,
so you're making the argument, we should just exempt it.
yes.
There's so few of them, why?
There's so few of them and it doesn't have, the optics don't look real nice to be like, you know. I mean, maybe I'm impressed by what's going on overseas, but you know, it's like the amount of bad optics coupled with how much are we really talking about here?
Mhm.
Not much, probably.
And then I think of it on the flip side in terms of equity, right? When we're looking at treating people in an equitable manner. Firefighters and veterans are already getting the exemption for their primary residence. And they're then taking the extra step to have an income property. I feel very conflicted about being exempted because our taxes are what they are. And
So the key was income producing.
Income
I think what I'm.
Right, oh, right, and
We're
that's,
all in agreement, no to additional income producing properties. The question is, and I'm not convinced personally, but it's the group, and I'm a veteran. If I buy a property, you know, first of all, it might be a technical problem. I have to go back and take a look. I don't know if a property owner can go in twice in the county system.
Don't believe so, based on my conversation. So I asked Mark Taylor, like, what is the process? And he said that would have to be done at the city level, because I don't think they can do don't quote me if it was multiple or a non-developed lot, so a vacant lot. I don't think can carry a veteran exemption, because it's undeveloped, that code doesn't, I don't think allow for it. So that might be the hiccup you were talking about.
Well, let's deal with the issue, put aside the technical. That may come back and we'll have to, you know, accept it. But, do we want to take a vote as to non-income producing adjacent lots to the primary property? Who's in favor of allowing exemption for that? Okay,
What income based? We're not voting on yet. Or,
well, let's vote on it. If it's income producing, do we want to allow an exemption on that as well? All those in favor, say aye.
Is this an adjacent property?
This one in particular is, from what I heard.
But they're not an income,
but it's not an income.
It's just undeveloped.
yeah, they have a home and there's a lot next to them that is undeveloped. It may have been developed years ago, but it's hard to tell. There's a
Right,
great.
I thought we just voted on that one, saying, we said, no, we don't want, we said we will allow the exemption.
Correct.
For the rest of the property, non-income producing.
Right.
Now we're voting on whether if it's an income producing property.
Correct.
Regardless of location, regardless of
Regardless of
whether it's
location.
adjacent or
I
remote.
can kind of feel your tax pain about taxes or taxes and maybe we, you know, adjacent not producing income, okay, we can let that one go. But if they're getting an income, you know, let them pay taxes.
Right,
Vote. All in favor of extending exemption to a income producing property? All in favor, say yea. Okay, so that is no. Chris?
I think that's fair.
Yes, please.
Very.
I do too.
I don't know if we'll even see that.
I'm sorry?
I don't even know if that'll come
Right,
across.
well, that case.
Right, so.
Well,
we've
you
got
know,
two, three
we
or
just
five
covered the
properties.
extremes, right?
So I guess for the question of the property that has a vacant parcel next to their residence, what's the process that that Tyler should advise them? Like, we know that property, but is there a process we should advise so that if there's another individual that is in the same situation, Tyler has an understanding of what to direct them to do? Is it just submit something to the city? I'm not exactly sure what that should be.
I would say that they have to submit a credit application for the, because it's a
Separate
different
parcel.
parcel.
An exemption.
Right, yeah, and it doesn't show on real property as the veteran status, because you can only have one parcel. So if that comes back to us, like it did this year, I'm just gonna, I mean, if everybody's in agreement, I think I will, you know, tell them that they need to fill out a credit application for the additional parcel
Exemption application.
exemption, sorry.
I'm sorry, we need to be careful with that word. We need to be,
Would that be something, so with that, would that be something we need to resubmit yearly? Just given the thought, at some point they could sell the property, it could change hands, so the way like the credit, it goes for 10 years, or that 10-year window. It just doesn't matter who owns the property, I think we kind of went through this.
that's correct.
So for this veteran piece, would they need to submit an application every year to continue to show that they still own the property? I guess that was the piece, the wrinkle that could come up in the future.
So there's two wrinkles, and you're right. When we discussed this, we knew that the firefighters, they need to submit it annually to their company to get approval.
Yeah.
Veterans, I've always felt veteran is a veteran. But now we're talking about, and it's, I mean, if they sell place, well, actually, they sell place, then let's think about this. So the law indicates that exemptions, not exemptions, credits are applied to the property, not to the homeowner. So in other words, if you have 10 years credit, and you sell the house after 5, the new property owner can continue for another 5 years, claiming that a credit, right? Yeah. With the veterans, we always felt that, well, they're a veteran, it's not gonna change. But so here, they have a property and then they sell it. That exemption should not continue.
Correct.
But now I'm wondering how does the system pick that up?
So the challenge here is using this exact example, the residence that they currently own has an exemption.
Yeah.
The vacant property doesn't. If they were at some point if the board was to consider giving them credit for the vacant lot and they sold the vacant lot in the future, but not the residence that they currently have, we were gonna have to manually override the formula to say that, no, they're not listed as a county veteran on the vacant property, but the city is granted credit, just like, or exemption, just like the credit applications, we have to manually provide the value of credit that they're given. So we have to manually do it, so the question is, how often would they have to verify that they own the property, I guess?
Well, put put aside the additional property,
Sure.
because the court issue still,
Well, if they were to sell their residence, every year we get a new tax rule from Columbia County Real Properties.
right?
So as soon as that property is sold, if it's no longer owned by a veteran, it would lose the veteran status through the county tax rules.
So does that mean when the rules finalize that we're going to go through on July first and make sure that there have been no adjustments
So
prior
what-
to July first between when we close out applications in June and when the rule is finalized in July?
So that's one of the things that we did last year, at the last, days of time was, we asked the county, generally what we did when we created the file was we had an initial file from the county of all the parcels in the city of Hudson. And then when we got to like the June period, and they had like the tentative roll kind of started, they sent us a new file, we cross-referenced that with anything that changed, we added any parcel that had been added. And then at the final roll point, we verified any parcel that had changed at the last minute. Someone did a subdivision or changed a lot of ownership. So we tried to catch it at the very end. And as long as there aren't major changes, the file itself can pick all that up. The credit applications and any manual overrides we have to do would just be something we have to keep track of internally.
So by taking the county's fee for exemptions, takes care of any changes from one year to the next.
To my knowledge, it should.
Except the exemption we just gave, the credit we just gave, we just voted on. So now I'm gonna show that. They're gonna have to submit to us every year. It's the only way we're gonna catch that. If they have a second unvacant lot. Because it's gonna show on his spreadsheet that it's a taxable parcel.
So, which kind of says we should take veterans and firefighters exemptions from the county. And that's it. And so they don't acknowledge that adjacent property as being, that has exemption status. Unless we want to start getting manual about it.
Well, it's gonna get confusing, especially to anybody who sits in these seats after us. You know, I might remember that for now, but who's to say that I'm gonna be here forever?
Well, we would have to, that would be something that we should write into the law, right? Okay,
Lloyd had a question. He had his hand up.
Oh, so I remember Ryan Mott, one of the supervisors, talking about the veterans. And I think you need to learn what he's learned. There's some change. And I got the impression, don't hold me to this because I'm not even sure about this. So the veterans were, I believe, having to resubmit their exemption every year. That may have changed to 2 years. So I seem to remember hearing something like that. Ron Knott would know more about it because, so,
that's not my understanding at all.
well, then I could be, there's been a change recently from 1 year to 2 years or 2 years.
I don't know.
I'm just saying I think you probably need to get more specifics and details. And right now, I think we don't have enough, you don't really have a complete picture.
Well, there's a couple of questions and I'll agree with you on that, although I don't know, I don't want to start chasing rumors, to be honest,
So you
but.
should find out from
One, we want to check into the technical aspect
Hey,
of whether or not we can do that on the county system. I'm gonna take that on and see what are the technical issues around the veteran exemption.
I'll forward you the correspondence I had with Mark Taylor then.
Yeah,
He kind of explained the process, would need to be a city process, so maybe the language in there would be helpful to understand. So,
appreciate it.
Yep.
Good. Okay, now with all that said, we need to get back on track in terms of the work we want to accomplish this year.
So right off the bat, I think we need to clean up anything that we missed last year. I know there's a couple crosswalks. There was some issues that came in from, what was the latest issue we just had with, Houston?
Which I
There's
guess,
something about, tripper hazard or something that
I
Vosburg
think,
did.
I think Rob Terry looked at that. I
Yeah.
don't know exactly.
Yeah, either way, I think we just need to clean up a little bit of the stuff that was hanging out there. Because I know our funds are limited. Sure. This year, right?
Right.
So, it may be a year that we don't get a large amount, this large RFP out. And I'm just thinking realistically, because we don't wanna empty the bank. Right, it's our first year with income coming in, this is our first year of having to pay back the loan. There's a few things hanging out there that we didn't finish. I know the 300 block of Warren Street is that big crosswalk that connects in front of the, Opera House, that's gotta go.
I'm pretty
We
sure,
gotta pay for that, we gotta put the new one in.
I'm pretty sure Rob was gonna discuss doing that through from my memory from last year, Rob, his comment was that they used their paint for this year and then next year they were gonna look at, what their
Yeah,
paint.
covering the one up and creating, it's just, I'm just thinking realistically, we need to tighten up what we had left off before we.
So how do you suggest we do that? And how do we define the scope of that cleanup?
I think we just need to go through,
Well, I know what we did originally, Gary, if I think when we first started, we had a couple of meetings, outside of this, but with a few members, just to kind of talk about some suggestions, and maybe that's helpful as well as, I know Tyler and I, we've walked a number of the areas, but, there are definitely some areas to public buildings we could look at, is more focused on any public building that still needs an accessible pathway or something like that. That might be a good starting point.
What's the status of all of our sidewalk contracts? Have they been closed out?
Yep.
So they've been closed out, punch listed?
Yep.
Complete?
Yep.
So we're all done.
I think there's just a few things hanging out that we're gonna be added to the next round, right?
Well,
So,
there were some questions about, a few curb ramps that weren't done and reasons why. And I think some of those had to do with, contractual challenges and cost. The goal of the original project was to complete as many as possible with the budget the city had. And if there was certain curb ramps that potentially needed additional time to develop plans for, or could be extremely expensive, to note those and try to come up with a, way to complete those at a later date. By no means did we complete every curb ramp in the city. It was trying to create a accessible route between public buildings. I know there's a big project that the DPW is planning for the sewer separation on Columbia, so that's why we didn't do work on Columbia Street specifically. There were still a few other curb ramps that, based on what we had estimated project costs and what the bids that we received came in, there wasn't much more that would have been able to fit in that budget and left a balance. So I don't know what the exact balance is. I know that changes as the assessment fees are paid. So it might be, how much money is available and how much does the board feel is a safe amount of money to spend without being too low for, again, the next year and moving forward. So, there are definitely some areas we could look at as a group or individually and continue some of them.
So on the budget, it's not like we have to wait for the assessment to come in.
Right.
We can draw from the general fund and pay that. So we have, a good chunk, about 300,000. 250 from the assessment of this year. We're paying 50 back to the loan. And we still had about 100,000 left over from the initial 500.
so a rough total.
Three.
So why don't we have Ryan come up with, a plan of what we have left out there from the initial, DOJ.
So one of the pieces, I think Gary and I talked about this earlier is, not today, but in previous conversations, one of the lines of the, the DOJ is focused on municipal buildings. But also it says crosswalks and sidewalks in general. So if there's an area in the city that desperately needs sidewalk repair, that could be something that the board also prioritizes. I know that the area on, Columbia, 6 and Columbia was done. That was by the property. That was an area that,
That was 40 grand,
I believe
it's
it.
been 40 grand.
So again, I think if there's areas that the city or the board is aware of that are on a high list of priorities, then maybe something else, especially in that route to public buildings, might be something else to look at as well.
Out of the three, I think we need to, as a committee, say, what is the percentage that we wanna spend this year? Before we give him the go-ahead on labeling, really what we attack next. We obviously don't wanna empty the bank.
Why not?
Well, because what if we wanna apply for grants, or what if we have an emergency, or,
Okay,
I'm not saying that we can't spend 75% of it, but what is that percentage?
okay.
And then roughly we'll have obviously another 300 next year. So we could always take what we have left from this year and next year and do a bigger project. It's just a thought.
I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, but no, I think, let's start with putting a list together of, and you're right, I think the best guidelines for us to follow would be the guidance we received from the DOJ initially, right? And so, you named it, avenues to the municipal buildings and crosswalks. If we can go beyond that, I would say also, I think then the priority would be, where's the heaviest traffic? And there's still work to be done going between Amtrak and Warren Street. And I can see that being something we should be focusing on as well.
Another thought could be is we did a lot of curb ramps, is looking at sections of sidewalks between curb ramps that were repaired, and seeing if there's sections of sidewalks that fit between where the board's already authorized were previously to, again, continue that accessible route path. Then you could say we knocked off Fifth Street as an example, or some area between X and Y on Fifth Street.
I like that. Okay, so Ryan, can we tap you to put together that list and work with Tyler on that? Can you? Okay. So let's do that and we'll look at it and go from there.
Sure.
And you're right. If in fact, there's a real violation that's, halfway down the block and it's a simple one-off, let's see if we can, piggyback that into the project, that project.
Sure.
The grant thing, are we gonna have someone look into that?
Well, if you remember last year, we assigned Dave,
That's right.
with the idea of looking into the grants. And so, as long as he's still open and to doing that, I think we continue with that.
And we just need to be a little bit careful. I know, there were some issues with the last one,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
making sure that it's a straight match and.
yeah, we need to go, going in, we need to know what the, specifications and requirements are.
Yeah. I just, I think we get a little bit more bang for our buck there, that's all.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
I'll talk to Rob about that crosswalk, see if we can fit that in. Just to finalize that on the 300 block. I'll get an answer for that.
Good. Any questions from the public? Sir?
So we got the mayor's, newsletter. So it's always good to take credit for, work done. I think George is, spot on with that. To accomplish, the ADA compliance or wherever progress there is. He probably wants to put that in the newsletter, But
We
the
can
other
get you a
point,
list for that.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can get a list to her for that.
Yeah, so all these, bullet points, these have been addressed, that's a good idea. Your point about making money, it's kind of an interesting thing, and this might be tangential.
No one said anything about making money.
No, the leveraging property, for rental, for cash flow. That's making money, people that do that. So this has nothing to do, and I won't take up too much of your time from my own personal, perspective on this. But I see this historic preservation, which is not here, but they do appropriateness. And now, my mom was into historic preservation. They put the house back exactly as it was when it was originally built. We do, I think, and this is, we do something like faux historic preservation, because we do something, we think it would be appropriate. And the certificates of appropriateness. So it's just an adjunct to your issue about, the veterans having a cash flow property in addition to their, is like one property here on Union, the guy wants to take the property down, because it's, but it could probably be preserved. It would, a lot of money, a lot of investment, but he has one cash flow property, and he decided to go do another cash flow property in a historic district. So I'm just, it's kind of my own personal thing, and probably has nothing to do with anything here, but it gets to the issue
You're the
of.
wrong committee.
Yeah.
The best response.
It gets to the issue of, when you're making money off of something, is that your primary purpose or are we having single family homes? Now, there was an initiative federally to stop corporations from buying 10, 20, and 100 homes, right? And have a single, homes are for single families. And now there's this whole rental thing, and which a lot of people get on the bandwagon, and they, they do cash flow, and it's a nice little thing, but so what is Hudson? The Hudson, there you go, I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting up with me.
Appreciate it.
Long meeting,
looks like Justin has a question.
Justin,
just in time.
Are you muted?
What the cow?
can't hear you.
It's odd. Not muted.
Speak up, Justin. Well, the other thing is, I agree about Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, and I think if you got only a few gripes, you did pretty good.
Let me just make sure that the chat is on. Let's try unmuting. Justin, does that work?
Are you there, Justin?
Mic is disabled.
Hello.
You
Hello.
are-
Hi, can we hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Okay, so first of all, welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you, Justin.
You're welcome. Are you having fun yet?
Always.
I wanted to just bring up those wonderful big jumbo ward maps that Ryan and Crawford gave to all of us last year. I didn't know if you guys have yet used those 5 ward maps. Those were to be used to identify high priority areas. Everybody in theory would have walked each of their respective wards following that map and highlighting which sidewalks are, deemed high priority. Those maps were left in the mayor's, in your office, Tiffany. So
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think they would have been thrown out. I do think, now that roles have been shifted. You know, those maps should be shifted. So whichever ward I was going to have, you should have. And I think it's important to just, at the very least, everybody to, you know, continue with that and come up with some priorities. And then you can match those to like what Ryan was saying. You look at areas that have already had some work done, and you know, that might be deemed a high priority just to continue on with that work that was already done. But it's good to, you know, have that walking map, you know, process begun. That was my comment.
Sure.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, I think the approach that we're taking here right now is let's look at let's look at keeping with the approach to municipal buildings and the high traffic and crosswalks, curbs. And then if we can add to it, if we have a whole lot left over, then I think that's time for us to go back and start looking at these, inspecting the streets and going through that process. Agree?
Yeah, Timmy, I still have mine, I can give you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I still have one in as well.
Yeah, we all do.
And I've done mine.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's a great point by Justin. You know, when we had that $1 million grant in our eyes, we were like,
Yeah.
let's do this, let's jump in front of that.
Yeah.
And now we're,
Do we need to have a strategy, to explain to people if we're kind of stepping back a little bit, which I agree, it's probably better to conserve some of our funds. But do we need to have a strategy to tell the public why we're kind of stepping back a little bit?
They don't know.
I don't think so, and I don't know if it's really stepping back, I just don't wanna,
Well, yes,
You know, I'm just saying that, like, you wanna
You don't want
bite
to,
off too much.
yeah, you don't want to get ahead of the
have-
Promise.
Right, and,
Step over promise.
you know, with the cost of everything going up now, you know, we may say, you know, let's put out this RFP and do all this work and get so many square feet of sidewalk and the bids come back and we're right back in the situation we were with the grant. You know, so telling the public that maybe not, but, you know, just knowing that as a board, let's clean up what we left out first and then move forward.
Better to your own horn.
Okay, anything else?
Any other questions from the public?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, Bill Houston here, 558 State Street. As an avid walker myself, I get really tired of, well, you know, before I get into a specific intersection or specific sidewalk, I was wondering if somebody could tell me if you guys have any idea, like a general idea, when this SID work is going to start, when the first sidewalk is going to be replaced. Like, do you foresee it happening this year, next year? Any ideas?
Yeah, Bill, the SID work began last year. And,
Okay, but- That was curb ramp work, right?
that was what?
Curb ramp?
Curb ramp.
Yeah. So what
Yeah.
about sidewalks though?
That's what we were
Any
just
idea when
discussing.
that's gonna start?
Yeah, we discussed it and we are hoping that we can begin getting to them this year. But still the priority that we discussed here tonight was ensuring that we're clear to all municipal buildings and our curb work. Beyond that, then we do want to start looking at the high trafficked areas, as I mentioned, as an example, Amtrak to Warren Street.
Okay, so since South Fifth Street, the horrible sidewalk, the horribly dangerous sidewalk, where somebody injured themselves a couple of years ago, actually, a couple summers ago, falling. That's Galvin's property, the vacant lot of Fifth and Warren. Every time I walk by there, or actually walk down there and try not to fall on my face, I wonder to myself, when is this going to be fixed? And my fear is that the longer this takes, that the SID project to get started, to get completed, is that a sidewalk like that remains and gets worse for years and years and years because it's not a priority and it's not leading to a service building. And I guess that's my fear now. Like, is it possible to call code enforcement and tell them about how bad that sidewalk is and hope that they'll actually do what the code allows them to do, which is to get the property owner to fix that sidewalk? Or should I just wait for you guys to get to it?
Well, yeah, at this point in time, the property owner is responsible for keeping the sidewalk clear of ice and snow. The city is responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalks.
Okay, so what the code says about property owners fixing their sidewalks is no longer valid, correct?
I'm not an attorney, but I believe the SID law, basically, overwrites that code.
We're right, it supersedes it. Okay. And that, again, that's my concern, that especially that sidewalk, long stretch of sidewalk, right from Warren to the alley, will remain and just get worse and worse and worse over the years. I mean, I assume you guys will get your work started at some point. I hope that's on the priority list at some point, because it really needs to be. As well as the intersection of 6th and Rope Alley on the southwest side, something Ryan and others are very well aware of. That's a serious problem. It's a 6-inch drop. Talk about an ADA nightmare. And nobody in a wheelchair can get over that sidewalk in either direction. And I live with it every day. I walk by there practically every day. And if I were disabled, I'd probably be, I probably would have moved out of Hudson by now, because it's just, again, I hope that's on the priority list. I hope it doesn't take another 5 years or 10 years to get that thing done, because at least as Ryan knows, it's a big headache. You got a big problem there. It's a unique situation, but that's what I hope. And I'd like to touch on one last thing, if I could. What I've noticed in Hudson the past few years is that we have a curbstone problem. There's some beautiful old curbstones in this town along our streets. Some of them remaining still attractive and doing their job, many of them falling apart. And what I've seen recently, last year or two, is that when sidewalks are replaced, curbstones are not put in. The curbstones are replaced with a concrete extension of the sidewalk that certainly don't last as long as beautiful bluestone curbstones or whatever they're made of. So there's this lack of attractiveness, and concrete just doesn't hold up as well. And I guess, is that an issue that the Public Works Board takes up, or you guys are approaching? Like, when a sidewalk needs to be replaced, are you pulling out curbstones and replacing them with concrete? That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Bill. We haven't gotten to that last issue, but to your point, we discussed, as we come up with a priority to address sidewalks, we do want to get the input from the public. And we certainly would appreciate your insight in that process as well. So yeah, we think it's important that we review what we believe are the priorities with the public and take that into account.
Okay, so replacing sidewalks is probably not going to involve curbstones because it's very expensive, but it's just sad to see them all go. Actually, last question, if I could. When this work starts, SID work starts, do we know who the contractor is going to be? You're going to put that out to bid, and it could be anybody, the low bid?
We put it out to bid, and so yes, I don't know if you can say that we'll always give it to the lowest bidder. There's lots of factors involved, but last year we put out 3 or 4 projects to bid. 3, and various factors came into play, and oftentimes it was the price, because a contractor who doesn't want to do the work for whatever reason, they're too busy, etc., is just going to come in with a very high bid, So, and some of the bids we got last year, the difference was kind of ridiculous.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah,
so I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, well, whoever it is, I hope it's not Vosburgh because I've seen some terrible work of theirs, as I've tried to point out to you guys. Their work is not holding up well, and I hope that if you find where these areas are on 6th Street, on 7th Street at the corner with State, that they didn't do good work. I hope they come back and fix it, especially if this stuff starts to crack and fall apart, because that's just the way it should be. These guys were hired. I don't think they were professional pavers, but we're living with their work and it's already starting to fall apart. Thank you.
We'll look into that. Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
to know what these blue stones are. I haven't seen them.
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Was a nice night.
You too.
Excellent. 6:30,
Oh, when you see